So Disney's getting sued again. And I mean, look, we talk about all the time Dow 30 components, Fortune 500 companies, they get sued, a lot of them literally every day. I mean, this is not that far-fetched. But Disney tends to have more high-profile, crazy stuff. But here we go. Bob Iger's Disney self-evaluation revealed in pay discrimination fight. We talked about this where Bob Iger touted how good a job he did in 2019 as he was stumping for his extra bonuses. In that year, he was compensated upwards of $60 million between cash and stock. In that same year, in that same year, Forbes magazine, or I believe maybe Fortune magazine, estimated Bob Iger's net worth to be somewhere hovering around $700 million. So a few nuts shy of a bill right there. But here we go. Disney's legal woes mount as executive notes pay equity nightmare in unsealed court documents. The company, Disney, is facing a still growing class of nearly 9,000 women alleging they were paid less than their male counterparts. And again, we still don't know if this includes biological men that identify as women. God, I hope it does. But Ron, take it away. Your thoughts on this one, sir?
Pay disparities are routinely demonstrated statistically. And when you have a class, the fact that class certification was granted here, that is the single biggest fight in any class action. So if the class action was granted, that means this is another liability for Disney to put on its books, a contingent liability. They're going to have to pay someone some money. And they're also going to have to make some changes in terms of pay.
With a class the size of 9,000, and I've seen, and obviously, Ron, this is going to go to court. We're going to have full discovery here, and that's when I think things are going to get super interesting.
Does it go to discovery, really? Or does it get settled?
Here's the thing. With 9,000 and growing, Ron, let me ask you this. If you had to settle a case, just in your experience, of this scale, 9,000 plus, maybe now 10,000 plaintiffs involved, talking about pay discrimination, we're talking about in the state of California. I don't know the laws out there, but I'm imagining they're probably going to have some punitive damages that can be on the table in terms of actual damage, or at least in addition to actual damages, I could say. This seems like a case to me that even to settle, we're talking about hundreds of millions, maybe approaching the billion mark if it goes to trial. What do you think?
Well, it won't go to trial. Class actions don't go to trial. It will settle. But again, I think it's a two-tiered problem for Disney. It's writing that check. See, the settlements are often structured in ways that make it possible for the company that's making the payment to not have to write out a gigantic check all at once.
Right.
The main thing is that the plaintiff's class action lawyers get paid at once.
Do they still do it in such a way, Ron, to where when they do these structured settlements, they still use companies like to do reverse annuities where they're paying in and then they'll have like Principal or somebody used to do structured settlements, I know, for lawyers years ago, where they'd say, here's your $10 million settlement, but you're getting it paid out over a certain amount of time, and that would afford the defendants, in this case Disney, to pay a lesser amount than the judgment as like a net present value to pay out over time. Is that kind of still how it works?
That is definitely a tech. I mean, it's really just a matter of financing. In the case of, well, let's put it this way: if we were talking about Disney of a year ago, we would say, well, in the case of Disney, which is a company that we think of as being awash in cash, there would be no reason to do something like that.
They're not awash in cash. We know
they're not awash in cash anymore.
They just wrote an 8.5, Ron, in case you don't know, or the audience may have forgotten, or they don't know, because this just happened. They just stroked an $8.5 billion check to their competitor, Comcast Universal.
That's right.
That's
what I was
whatever
alluding
cash
to.
they had went out the door in a cashier's check.
Right. I mean, that is indeed a very. I mean, I'm not familiar with the case itself, and although my firm is headquartered in California. I'm not admitted in California, so I couldn't tell you. I mean, the sky is the limit. It will go to it will be settled, and it will be a very big number. But again, remember, there's the number, and then there's the remedies that the forward-looking remedies that Disney's going to have to worry about, and that is not going to be good for the system.
Ron, what strikes me is that just at a casual glance, and this is what I'm really curious to get your thoughts on. We're in a world right now where we're dealing with what seems to be two...
In a world
yes. Where we're dealing with two...
In a world where worlds don't
where-
exist.
We're dealing with two conflicting legal arguments, it feels like, right? So on one side, we've got the Supreme Court, we've got this legal railing against diversity, equity, and inclusion, saying that, no, you can't just hire and pay people, in turn pay people, based on their skin color, their ethnicity. That's wrong. It violates civil rights. Then on the other side, you've got this pay equity discrepancy. It seems like there's going to be some overlap and some fun things here that could happen to one extent or another, because one of the things, and I don't know if it's in this article, I was trying to find it earlier, but I read so many articles on it this week, I was trying to go back and find where I saw this. Some of the pay equity figures I was seeing in terms of a discrepancy, we're talking about literally a couple of percent, like 2, 3, 4, 5% on average. And it seems like the difficulty that is being had, or the arguments being made, is Disney was trying to say that, well, wait, you can't lump all of these 9,000 plus women into a single class because they have wildly varying job descriptions. From chick sweeping up in the park to executive producer kind of thing. It seemed like a wide swath, but part of me wonders if this isn't going to... Are we looking at something legally that could be really funny to watch as they try to juggle all of these new interpretations, these new Supreme Court rulings with DEI and everything else? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, you're bringing up a really important point. I mean, not only is class certification a little bit surprising here because of the wide extent of different kinds of jobs, but also it is a well-established empirical fact that women's career paths are different from men's career paths. And the trope about women's pay equality is really misleading. That's why the certification of class here is so astonishing.
Mm-hmm.
Because what class certification says is, notwithstanding those distinctions, the harm that is being alleged is amenable to proof that is sufficiently consistent across all class members that it would be economically and practically more efficient to try them as a class than otherwise. That's an extraordinary ruling, and I don't really, I imagine it's going to be appealed in and of itself.
Yeah,
but it's yes, you're right about the head-on collision between, we're seeing it in Title IX, we're seeing it, in the employment laws. It's a wreck because we have a piecemeal approach to trying to right social wrongs with the use of other people's money, and well, it's not an irrational system. It's not a rational system.
What I find interesting here, and I want to bring this up for everybody in the audience, pay close attention to this because I want people to understand what Ron just said about the whole pay equity myth, which I agree with. As somebody who's deeply rooted in finance and accounting and economics, I've been watching this argument happen for years, and every time it comes around, consistently, like they would say, my industry, the financial planning industry, the investment advisor, the stockbrokers, the insurance guys, we have the most ridiculous pay discrepancy. We're at the bottom of the barrel. Like, our discrepancy is over 40% between men and women on average. And I'm like, wait a minute. They lumped, like you're talking about, Ron, they lumped everybody in the financial services industry together. Meaning the men that have been financial planners and investment brokers, stockbrokers for over 20 years, with women that have been in the business working in clerical work in a financial services office that might have just gotten their Series 6 for 6 months. Like, this is stupid. Everybody, there is no men versus women's pay scale in my industry. Everybody gets paid the same trail, right, what they're worth. Everybody gets paid. Like, there's no pay scale for men get this much for a managed account or an investment or a stock they sell, and women get this much.
Because because those are prescribed payouts.
Right.
You're not being paid. I was in the financial services business. It's there's your myrrh.
Yeah, right. I mean,
there it is. There's your frickin' myrrh.
That's it. Like, but they tried to say that in the financial services industry, it's one of the most absolutely oppressive industries to women, and women get paid 40% less than men for doing the same jobs. It's like, no, this is ridiculous. No. So this is why, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate. And again, like I tell folks, I want to be fair. This is what Disney's arguing against. And I think that they probably have, in this case, I hate to say it, y'all, Disney has some merit. I'm saying that because I'm not just a guy that's going to sit here and just wholesale bash Disney. You know, everything Disney does is wrong. No.
Isn't this a case of them eating their own at this point?
It is, and that's what makes it funny. Disney kind of created this mess for themselves, right? Yeah. And that's kind of the problem here. But this story here, and this is a good story of, no, I think that this woman looks like, based on the context of the story, probably got screwed over.
But was she screwed over because she's a woman?
And
was she screwed over because she was screwed over like most people in the corporate world are screwed over at one point?
Exactly.
And
yeah, Ron's right.
More importantly, Ron, does that mean that her story in and of itself constitutes the same story for the whole class?
Well, of course, they're all going to go, well, me too, of course. And at the same time, here's the thing, and I'll invoke one of my favorite quotes from the beloved R&B. You don't get what you're worth, you get what you negotiate. Right, that's the other side of this too. So, and just historically, whatever, has there been pay discrepancies in the past? I'm sure there has, but 9 times out of 10, it all boils down to what you're worth in certain industries. But if it's a negotiation salary tactic, then that's on you.
Negotiate,
and
typically,
and historically, women
not saying they can't. They don't.
Historically, women have asked for raises far fewer times than men.
Yep.
I have just a wonderful story of my mother worked for Midas Muffler as a posting. She worked on a Burroughs posting machine. So, Ron, do you remember what a posting machine is?
Of course.
So very few. They spit out the checks. So you had to run a posting machine to do that. My mom was paid like next to nothing for years. It had come out of a depression here in Canada. She was always afraid to death to ask for a raise. Good old European stock. And then they fired her and all the other girls on the posting machines because they brought in new computers, compact 386s, to computerize the entire Midas Muffler network across Canada.
I can't believe you just said the phrase compact 386 on my stream, buddy. That's awesome. I love it.
Within 2 months, the system did not generate a single check. So they panicked, phoned my mom, who was a pro on the posting machine, and said, and my mom never asked for a raise. We begged her to ask for a raise. She was making at the time $150 a week or something. It was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And very shy, scared to death of confrontation. I heard her on the phone. They said, so how much do you want? She said, $750 a week. Mm-hmm. And they went, yes, done.
Yeah. I
Come
mean, that's
in.
just it. I mean, any man in that position, I know I would have done that. I'm like, oh, you screwed up. You're desperate and you need me back or else the whole operation's going to collapse.
Yeah.
Oh, going to cost you now.
I was,
I
you
mean-
know what? I was very proud of my mother.
Yeah. But here's this lady, just real quick, this Nancy Dolan, manager of creative music and marketing at Disney, denied a promotion to director over the objections of her supervisor. Disney didn't want to do it. Who said to Disney she's worth her weight in gold. He urged the higher-ups to reconsider. Nancy backfilled and took over the entire position of an EVP and executive vice president more than 3 years ago for a fraction of the cost and is invaluable to me. And this happens a
How
lot
much
in
does
the
she
corporate
weigh,
world.
though?
This happens a lot in the corporate world. The issue here is that no, it's all right. The issue here is that this happens frequently. Somebody leaves, and then like the assistant who was doing a lot of the day-to-day work is asked to step in and fill in, or somebody else down the hall is asked to step in and fill in and pick up their workload. And then, short of them asking for a pay raise, is not going to get paid any extra because the company's going to decide, well, if we can get away with just paying him the same thing or maybe 10% more to do double the amount of work, cha-ching, that's a win. You have to go in and fight for what you're worth. They tried to do that here, but it didn't work. Now, is this something that's specific to this one lady, Nancy Dolan, or is this systemic across the Walt Disney Company?
We don't know that.
We don't know that exactly. So my point is that even for Disney to settle this case, I mean, the law firm that's representing this class, Ron, I imagine, is going to be asking for a big, fat settlement. I mean, what kind of number do you want to put on this if you had to imagine for a second?
Welcome to America.
I mean, give me a range. I mean, do you think this? Are we talking about 100 million, 50 million, 500 million? What kind of settlement? I mean, usually for these things,
It's not going to be quite that high. The thing about class actions is they are, they don't really almost ever recognize the actual loss.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of what comes with the efficiency here. There are going to be certain class representatives. There are going to be a lot of economic experts who are going to testify about the average disparity. I simply don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about it. And part of the equation also on the settlement will be the likelihood of the certification being overturned.
Yeah.
So,
it'll be
is it going to be in the 9 figures? I'm sure not less.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be in the 10 figures? That I don't think so.
I think there's a lot of, I guess, is it fair to say, Ron, that at this point there's probably still a lot that we don't know, right? And to make a, there's a lot we don't know to kind of make a judgment call.
I would say in my case, as the lawyer here who's, shooting from the hip, there's everything that I don't know. I only know what you've just told me, and no one should quote me on this. It is, and I've only been involved in a couple of class actions, and I've been on both sides of them as a lawyer. Sometimes they look a lot better, even when you get class certification. Certainly in the securities area, you can get class certification easily because that usually applies to all shareholders. That's still a long way from proving damages.
Yeah,
but this is a big, this is, I'm sure, something that Disney fought tooth and nail against happening.
I'm not a lawyer, but I have played one on TV.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.